some rain, while southern parts have the best chance of some sunshine.
And a couple of sharp showers. It's interesting, sharp showers. They're likely in Northern Ireland, but it will not be as wet here, and there should still be some bright and sunny spells around.
So, some further rain for Scotland this evening. Any isolated showers will die out, leaving a dry night. And that's how your weather's looking today.
Join me, Darren Grimes, for Real Britain every Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m. A news hour that comes with a trigger warning. Scorching hot opinion with prominent guests saying the unsayable and a little bit of weekend fun thrown in. Unlike other broadcasters, I won't be forgetting what the B in our name stands for. So howie in for Real Britain Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome. I'm Alastair Stewart, and for the next 2 hours I'll be keeping you company on TV and radio with the stories that really matter across the country. We have plenty coming up today, including with the race to be leader of the Conservative Party and Prime Minister nearing its conclusion. We'll be speaking to a range of political guests from all corners of the United Kingdom to try and find out what the devolved nations think of it all. We also want to know what you think. Plus, in our rural spotlight this week, the peat ban. How is that going to impact upon the growth of your glorious garden? But first, let's bring you right up to date with all of the news today. Here's Polly Middlehurst.
Al, thank you. Good afternoon to you. It's just after midday, and here's the latest. Police investigating the murder of Olivia Pratt-Corbell have warned anyone withholding information is protecting killers. The 9-year-old was shot by a gunman who chased his intended target into her home in Liverpool on Monday. 2 men who were arrested on suspicion of murder have been released on bail, with one of them being recalled to prison for breaching the terms of his licence. Merseyside police are urging the public to come forward, saying silence is not an option.
We've got parents who've lost their children. We've got a 9-year-old girl who won't celebrate her 18th birthday. She won't celebrate her wedding. She won't have children of her own. If you've got information and you're withholding it, you're protecting the killers. We need your information.
Well, in other news today, a huge package of financial support has been promised by the government to help struggling households through the energy crisis. The Prime Minister has written an article in the Daily Mail where he acknowledged bills are going to be eye-watering and the next few months, he said, are going to be tough. He also said colossal sums of taxpayers' money is already being used to help people and his successor will announce more support next month. Well, the two Tory leadership candidates are yet to reveal exactly how they plan to ease the cost of living crisis. Rishi Sunak's team has criticised reports that Liz Truss plans to cut VAT by 5%, describing it as incredibly regressive. It's understood the Foreign Secretary has discussed a nuclear option with her advisers, which would reportedly save the average household more than £1,300 a year. Mr Sunak's campaign says the move would cost more than £30 billion. Meanwhile, Ms Truss has vowed to bolster Britain's defences if she becomes Prime Minister, saying the end of an era of complacency is done. She wants to push ahead with renewing Trident and she wants to strengthen support for intelligence services as part of her plan to protect the UK. Retired British Army officer Major General Tim Cross told GB News, with Russia a continued threat, Britain needs to reconsider its defence and foreign policies.
Over these last 20 years, we have become complacent. We never really put sufficient resources in terms of military into Iraq or Afghanistan, and we weren't prepared to stay there for the length of time that we had been involved in, for example, the Cold War. So I think we have been complacent, and what's happening in Russia, Ukraine, and indeed elsewhere, I mean, autocracies, dictatorships, China, and so on, has made people realise that we do need to think again about how we're going to engage in not just defence policy, but foreign policy and other aspects of our external relationships as well.
The Brexit minister is planning to sell off £1.5 billion worth of government offices in central London. Jacob Rees-Mogg told the Sunday Telegraph taxpayers shouldn't have to pay for buildings that are underutilised, with many civil servants still working from home. He's due to publish a property strategy that will see staff operating in fewer buildings as part of a government network of hubs. Well, as you've been seeing on GB News all this morning, more than 25,000 migrants have now crossed the English Channel so far this year. That's after 915 people were intercepted just yesterday. The Ministry of Defence saying they were on board 19 small boats. Monday saw the highest daily total on record, with 1,295 people making the treacherous journey from France. A new scheme's being launched to promote the next generation of UK artists, this time on a global scale. The government art collection is behind the project, which is known as Ex-UK, to showcase British creativity. An exhibition of works will be displayed across embassies and government buildings right around the world. And two skyscrapers nicknamed the Twin Towers have been demolished in India. Take a look. Thousands of people, of course, had to be evacuated from their homes ahead of that. On the outskirts of New Delhi, the 40-storey buildings, the largest structures to be demolished in India, destroyed because they violated building regulations. Police and emergency personnel were deployed for the operation. The skyscrapers coming down in a matter of seconds. A lot of dust too. That's it. You're up to date on GB News. More news as it happens. Now back to Alastair Stewart and friends.
Polly, thank you very much indeed. With just a little over a week to go in the Tory leadership race, two extraordinary developments today. The Truss camp has briefed on a bumper package of help, and it centres on tax cuts, not handouts. It's the splash, if you're listening to us on radio, there's the Sunday Telegraph, Truss-Mull's nuclear option, as they call it, of a 5% VAT cut. And in the Sunday Times, there it is there, there's top story, says Truss-Mull's emergency cuts to income tax and VAT to tackle an emergency crisis. Altogether, what the camp seem to be saying is that she'd cut VAT by 5% at a cost to the Treasury of nearly £40 billion a year, but at a saving to most of us of a little over £1,300 a year. There's also talk, as I say, of raising the threshold of what we can all earn before we pay any income tax, and also the threshold at which we start paying higher rates of income tax. It would all mean more in your pocket and pay packet than cheques in the post. Well, independent economist and former Treasury man Julian Jessup joins me later in the programme to run his informed slide rule over the economics and, equally importantly, the politics of it all. Secondly, in the Sunday Mail, 3 senior figures from the Conservative Party out in the country. That's Andrew RT Davies, the leader in Wales, Stephen Kerr, the chief whip for the Scottish Conservative group, and Matthew Robinson, who is the chairman of the Conservative Party in Northern Ireland, all come out for Liz Truss as the best candidate to defend the union. So, is it all over? I'm delighted to say that Andrew and Matthew, who've both been on the programme before, join me again live. Plus, pleased to be joined by Rachael Hamilton, MSP, member of the Scottish Parliament, for the Scottish Conservative perspective. A crisis focused minds, and as yesterday's programme demonstrated, we are in the midst of a difficult and complicated crisis of energy prices and the cost of living generally. But is Truss the answer? And has she finally come up with the formula, not only to win over Tory hearts and minds, but also the hearts and minds of the electorate? As always, we want to hear what you think. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk with any comments that you may have on that or any of the other stories that we're covering today. We are also on Twitter, as am I, and on Facebook. So, first up, I'm delighted to say, is Andrew RT Davies, leader of the Welsh Conservatives, for a Welsh perspective on that intervention. Good to see you back, and thanks for joining us. First of all, and it's a serious question, did you take soundings of your party in Wales, or is this you speaking personally coming out for Liz?
Well, good afternoon, Alistair. No, this is me personally coming out for Liz. If I look at my Senedd group here, about half of them have come out for Liz and half of them have come out for Rishi. It's a completely open contest. We were really indebted to all the people who put themselves forward at the start of this contest from the Parliamentary Party, because the breadth of talent that came forward showed what we have in the Conservative Party. But obviously, once the final 2 came forward, it was a time to make a decision. And we've had a hustings year in Wales in early August. The policy platforms have been laid out. And for me, obviously, Liz Truss is the person that I'd like to see come forward on September the 5th and be the next Prime Minister.
But you accept my main point, and that is this is a big intervention by a leader in what is a democratic contest to be decided by the ordinary membership of the party.
Well, it's my decision to come out and obviously say who I'm backing. I did inform Liz back in August the 4th, just after the Welsh hustings, because I thought it was important to go into that leadership hustings with an open mind to see what both the candidates had to say. And obviously, as the campaign has gone on now, we're getting closer to polling day. From my perspective, you can't, as a leader, sit on the fence. You have to put your cards on the table. And I've always been of the belief that we need to get money into people's pockets and leave that money in people's pockets. And the policy platform to deal with the cost of living pressures that Liz Truss has put forward seems to me to be the most sensible policy position that an incoming Prime Minister could take in the light of very, very difficult circumstances.
What led you, Andrew, to dismiss Rishi Sunak's deep concerns about the need to defeat inflation before you start cutting taxes?
I don't dismiss the policy positions that Rishi has taken. In fact, I respect Rishi. I respect the positions that he's taken as the Chancellor and the policy interventions that he's made. But my line of thinking on this is twofold. One, it's facing down the cost of living pressures that we all face at the moment, and obviously the intervention around tax cuts and making sure that money stays in people's pockets. So they're the determinants of how that gets spent, rather than put it into the government coffers, spin it round the tumble dryer of the government machine, and end up getting only small amounts back into the real economy. So I think it's important that people, if they go out and do a shift, they get to keep as much of that money as possible to help them pay their weekly and daily household bills. And secondly, the important position that Liz has taken in relation to the union, speaking here from Wales, but I'm sure colleagues from Scotland and Northern Ireland will speak eloquently on the fact that the pressures that the union is facing at the moment. It's really important that the Prime Minister, whoever comes in, as I said, I hope that's Liz on September the 5th, is that minister for the union as well as the Prime Minister. And obviously Liz Truss has talked at length about what she wants to do to strengthen the roots, the bonds that link all the countries and regions of the United Kingdom together.
There's also another extraordinary poll in the Sunday Express that suggests that 60% of Conservative members out in the country, right across the United Kingdom, I don't just mean Wales, I mean the entire United Kingdom, think that the best thing for the party and the country now, albeit with a week or so to go, would be for Rishi to throw the towel in and concede so that Truss and her team can get on with the job. Do you agree with that?
Well, we knew what the rules were, obviously, when the Prime Minister stood down, Boris Johnson stood down. I was a big supporter of Boris Johnson, and I happen to believe that he should have been allowed to continue. But it is a fact that the parliamentary arithmetic made it impossible for him to continue because he couldn't command that majority. So therefore, we have this contest now in the country, and it is important that everyone gets the chance to see both candidates perform, listen to their policy positions. Let's not forget, whilst the energy regulator announced what the energy cap would be in October, those prices have not fed through yet, and both the leadership candidates, whoever wins, is committed to working fast and furiously within the first couple of weeks of their premiership to make sure that there's help on the table. We know that the current government have been working up proposals that will be ready for any incoming Prime Minister to deal with these pressures, and so I think it's important now, with the final days and the final week left ahead of us, that as many people as possible left to vote do vote. And then ultimately, when that's declared on September the 5th, whoever that person is, and I hope it's Liz Truss, gets on with the job in hand. Because whoever wins, the first 100 days is going to be critical. I know all politicians say that, but in this particular instance, it is going to be critical, and it will define that individual and that individual's premiership going forward.
Yeah. I think a lot of politicians say it because it's blooming true, and I personally agree with you as well. Final question, Andrew, is this. Both Rishi and Liz have been clear that they support the union, and your party is, of course, the Conservative and Unionist Party. What, in your view, would a Liz Truss premiership bring to you, fighting the good fight against a bruised and battered Labour Party in Wales, but a Labour Party that is still in the majority and still in government? What does she bring to help you?
Well, three very quick things. First of all, emphasising the good that the UK government does, because let's not forget the bulk of any money available to the Welsh government comes from the UK Treasury, and it's that strength of the union delivering those resources into Wales. Secondly, highlighting where Labour have failed here in Wales. You know, 1 in 4 people in Wales are on a waiting list here in Wales, and Keir Starmer's on record as saying, for what people will get if they ever win an election on a general election basis, look at what Labour has done in Wales. Well, if you measure the economic performance, if you measure education, if you measure the health service, all those indicators show that where Wales has been run by Labour, sadly, if that happens on a Westminster level, the rest of the UK is in for a pretty torrid time. And thirdly, really importantly, is building a consensus across the union. And I think that having been the former the current Foreign Secretary and also International Trade Secretary, she is used to building those alliances, building those relationships that are so important, that we all recognise the strength of what is the greatest union, I would say, the world has seen, that of the United Kingdom.
Andrew RT Davies, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for breaking into your weekend to do that, and have a terrific rest of your Sunday. Good to see you, Andrew. Thank you. And Andrew RT Davies there, the leader of the Welsh Conservatives. And I'm delighted to welcome back now, for a Northern Ireland perspective, a former guest on this programme, chairman of the Northern Ireland Conservatives, Matthew Robinson. Matthew, great to see you again. Same opening question as I put to Andrew. Did you take soundings amongst your membership in Northern Ireland, or is this you speaking and you throwing your support personally behind Liz Truss?
Good to be back with you, Alistair. I'd say it's important to stress this is a personal decision. It's up to our members locally in Northern Ireland who they vote for, if they've not already cast their vote in this contest. I took soundings, of course, from the membership, and yeah, I mean, I think it's to be expected. We had different, there's differences of opinion. Absolutely, we've got two very qualified candidates, and I certainly didn't rush into this decision. I listened to what I heard from Rishi. I listened to what I heard from Liz, and I waited until after our hustings in Northern Ireland, and for me, it was a few reasons why I got to the point where I landed for Liz Truss. I mean, firstly, I think she has built an incredible coalition of support in the party across all wings of the party. I mean, she had support from Penny Mordaunt, support from Tom Tugendhat, Ben Wallace, who I have a huge amount of respect for. I came back to her campaign at an early point, but I also got from a unionist standpoint that she, I mean, let's not forget, Liz Truss put herself forward for the Northern Ireland Protocol portfolio, a pretty sticky situation, and she, in her capacity as Foreign Secretary, threw herself into the middle of that. She gets the detail on the Northern Ireland Protocol. She understands the precious nature of the union and the challenges it faces. And she also, and this is sometimes forgotten, but from a party management standpoint, I got a real sense of commitment from her with regards to a party political plan for the Northern Ireland Conservatives going forward for the next few years.
I'm going to come back to that point because I remember very well you correcting me last time you were on about whether or not the Conservatives contest seats across the piece there. But I'll come back to, I want to take your second point because it's absolutely crucial. Unlike Scotland, who we'll hear from in a moment, and Wales, from whom we have already heard, that protocol is utterly crucial to Northern Ireland and to your membership. And I'm struck by one possible thing. Is the fact that she appears to be a take-no-prisoners bruiser with the European Union quite important in your mind and that of the minds of your membership?
Yeah, I mean, her rhetoric's being robust, but, this is an individual who gets, understands the art of negotiation as well. She's led our country on the world stage as Foreign Secretary. If you look closely at Liz Truss's comments, over the course of this campaign, I think, of course, she's open to, fresh negotiations if they were presented to the UK government under her premiership on the protocol. But the reality is that I think a very fair and reasonable proposal has been put on the table by virtue of the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, the idea of a green lane where goods coming from GB to Northern Ireland, clearly for domestic consumption in Northern Ireland, should not be subject to checks. And of course, it would be ideal if our friends and partners in Brussels had a renewed sense of negotiation and wanted to sit down with a Truss administration. But I mean, Liz Truss's top priority is to restore our devolved institutions in Northern Ireland. And the reality is the protocol, as it's currently framed, does not enjoy cross-community support. Political unionism in Northern Ireland has not got behind the protocol. The top priority is to see the restoration of Stormont, without which, by the way, we don't have a functioning budget right now. There's funds have been frozen. There's been emergency powers that are going through right now that allow the Department of Finance in Northern Ireland to release about £400 million. But in the scheme of things, that's not going to come close to touching a lot of our issues. So we're in a really difficult situation in Northern Ireland. I think Liz Truss gets that, and she's fully behind trying to restore devolved government here.
The perfect intro to my final question, which genuinely was the question I was going to ask you anyway, Andrew, and that is this, that you know very, very well that in terms of the psephology of it, the voting patterns of it, Sinn Féin, utterly opposed to the union, are in the ascendant both north and south of the border. What does Liz Truss, if she's Prime Minister, do when she sits down across the desk from you and says, right, OK, Andrew, we've got to turn the tide here. This is what we do. What do you hope that she will bring at that point to the table? You've talked about the coalition, you've talked about the protocol, and you've talked about boosting the party. So I want to know, fill in the gaps on point 3. What's she going to do?
I think we need to present a really positive vision for the union. And the problem is right now, unionism in Northern Ireland has been split. I think there's arguably been infighting amongst the different unionist political parties. Northern Ireland's part of the UK economy that's heavily dependent still on the public sector. We need to try and unleash the, private sector economy in Northern Ireland. There's huge potential. I mean, Northern Ireland has really been able to show itself in a positive way on the world stage. I mean, HBO, sought to film huge parts of Game of Thrones in Northern Ireland. The British Open was hosted at Royal Portrush Golf Club, set to host that again in 2025. Northern Ireland can present itself as a really, as a beacon for investment on the world stage. But we've got to get away from the traditional, fractured division, politics of division of the past. And I think a Truss administration can really, through the vehicle of the Northern Ireland Conservatives, can try and present a positive vision, an exciting vision for unionism.
Matthew Robinson, always a pleasure. Look forward to the third encounter that I have with you, and thanks for breaking into your Sunday to talk to us today. That's Matthew Robinson there, chairman of the Northern Ireland Conservatives. And joining me finally in this segment for a Scottish perspective is Rachael Hamilton, member of the Scottish Parliament. And Rachael is clearly a member of the Scottish Conservative and Unionist Party. She sits for the lovely borders territory of Ettrick, Roxburgh and Berwickshire. Used to be David Steele territory when I was a mere whippersnapper. Ettrick, Tweedale and Lauderdale, I remember, one of my favourite constituency names. Great for you to come and join us. When you decided to declare, I can't ask you the same question because you're not the leader of the party in Scotland, but you know that your chief whip has declared for Liz. You support Liz as well. Is this a personal reflection of leaders like yourself and the chief whip, or is it a growing consensus in Scotland that Truss makes more sense for Scotland and the Union?
Well, it's a bit of both, Alistair, and good afternoon to you. I am speaking here from the beautiful borders. It is something that I spoke to my members of the local association about, and we've had lots of local rural shows, so there's been a good opportunity to speak to people about how they feel about the leadership contest. Also, from a personal point of view, Liz Truss was fantastic during the Scottish parliamentary campaign. She helped me launch my own campaign, and she has been a real advocate for Scotland. And we know that one of the things that really was strong about Liz in Scotland is that she helped to slash the 25% tariff when there was a US tariff over the argument about Boeing on Kashmir and Scotch whisky. So, that was really important for the Scotch whisky industry in Scotland, which is worth $5.5 billion to the Scottish economy. So, she already has, when she was Chief Secretary to the Treasury, also shown that she is very much in tune with levelling up the agenda in Scotland, ensuring that Scottish areas were supported with the city and region deals as well. So, Liz has already had an influence in Scotland, so people can see that. But from a personal point of view, I think that the Scottish Conservatives very much know that both candidates are strong. We've had a wide breadth and experience shown within the leadership contest. But yes, I think it's a bit of both, and I'm very confident that Liz will make it to number 10, and I'm really looking forward to her hitting the ground running, as she describes it as.
Was her attack, which was pretty personal, on the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, about being a showboater, a grandstander and best ignored? I mean, I'm an independent, I happen to be Scottish, as it happens, but that's going back a long, long way. But it did strike me as being below the belt, rather than addressing the issues of independence, addressing the issue of funding and the Barnett formula and the rest of it. To get personal like that wasn't very prime ministerial, was it?
Well, I think if Liz had been given the opportunity to expand her comments, I think we would realise that, obviously in Scotland, we were faced with Nicola Sturgeon trying to separate the United Kingdom, to take Scotland out of the United Kingdom, which is, of course, one of the most successful political, economic, cultural, social unions in the world, as Andrew RT Davies described earlier. I think it is important to recognise that we cannot have a constitutional crisis right now. We've got another crisis on our hands, which is the cost of living crisis. And Liz is committed to ensuring that people have more money in their pockets by cutting taxes and driving the economy. And I think that's really important to people in Scotland. So the comments that she made really were about, we've had an independence referendum, which was really divisive in 2014. None of us want to go through that again. The polls also show that people don't want to break up the country right now when they're facing issues such as, paying their energy bills and the energy price cap increasing by 80%. We're seeing that households may have to fit the bill for thousands of pounds worth of their energy supply by next spring. And it's just unsustainable.
OK, final question, and it does flow from that. And we were looking at pictures for folk who are listening to our conversation on radio rather than television of Nicola there, and they will know the polls at the moment. I want to put the same question to you as I did to my other two guests. What would Prime Minister Truss bring to your armoury, Scottish Conservatives, trying to see off a predominant SNP political culture and a resurgent Labour Party for the first time in nearly a decade? What does she bring to the party that helps you win that battle?
Well, first and foremost, she is committed to ensuring that we tackle the cost of living crisis. We have fantastic resources here in Scotland in the northeast. We've got, a wonderful oil and gas sector. She's committed to unleashing the potential in the northeast, and she's also committed to looking at new technological solutions to the supply of energy, such as nuclear, tidal, and wind, and those are all things that we have in great resource here in Scotland. She's also really committed, which I'm incredibly keen on, for less well-off areas in Scotland, which is to bring free ports and investment zones to Scotland. Liz is all about growing the economy and ensuring that we can afford public services by doing that, unleashing the potential of businesses, getting rid of lots of red tape and bureaucracy that businesses are faced with right now, and making the most of the potential of leaving the European Union. So I'm very confident that Liz...
I have to interrupt, otherwise we'll fall off, which is a very undignified way of doing things for both of us. But I think you made the point clear there about economic growth and support for the poorer areas, as well as just keeping the thing ticking over. Real pleasure having you on the programme. Welcome any time. And thank you for finding time for us this Sunday afternoon. Rachael Hamilton, member of the Scottish Parliament, Scottish Conservative and Unionist Party. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends. Lots more coming up on today's programme, including London's August bank holiday can only mean one thing: the Notting Hill Carnival. We'll be getting into the party spirit with our reporter live. But first, let's bring you up to date with the weather.
Well, looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK is looking mostly dry with sunny spells, though some rain towards the northwest of Scotland. So, starting off in Scotland then, largely cloudy there, albeit little sunshine towards the south, rain pushing in from the northwest, and that could be heavy at times. Moving across to Northern Ireland, a few sharp showers for many, but dry mainly, and some brightness breaking through as well. And whilst the odd shower can't be ruled out across northwest of England, it is unlikely we'll see many at all, with any warm or sunny breaks instead. A similar picture for you, just taking shape now across Wales. Most places here have some bright or sunny spells, in which case it should be pleasantly warm, a small chance of the odd shower expected there. Then in the Midlands, it'll be a little brighter than further west, with a greater chance of some lengthy sunny periods. Maximum temperatures in the low to mid-20s generally. And further east across East Anglia, also set to be a fine afternoon, variable amounts of cloud, meaning some smells of warm weather at times. Then towards the south coast for you last of all, a very similar picture there as well, dry, fine and sunny at times. Temperatures getting into the mid-20s for many, light winds as well. It will feel very warm. So the précis then, any showers dying out this evening, but some further rain across northwestern parts of Scotland, and that's how the weather's shaping up this Sunday.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GBNews.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good afternoon. Police investigating the murder of Olivia Pratt-Corbell have warned anyone withholding information from them is protecting killers. The 9-year-old was shot by a gunman who chased his intended target into her home in Liverpool on Monday. 2 men who were arrested on suspicion of murder have been released on bail, with one of them being recalled to prison for breaching the terms of his licence. Merseyside police are now urging the public to come forward, saying silence is not an option.
We've got a 9-year-old girl who won't celebrate her 18th birthday. She won't celebrate her wedding. She won't have children of her own. If you've got information and you're withholding it, you're protecting the killers. We need your information.
An appeal for information in Liverpool. Well, in other news today, the Prime Minister says a huge package of financial support will be delivered to help struggling households through the energy crisis. Writing in the Daily Mail, Boris Johnson acknowledged bills are going to be eye-watering and the next few months are going to be tough. He said colossal sums of taxpayers' money is already being used to help people, and his successor will announce more support next month. Well, with 2 Tory leadership candidates yet to reveal exactly how they plan to ease the cost of living crisis, Rishi Sunak's team has criticised reports that Liz Truss plans to cut VAT by 5%. It's understood the Foreign Secretary has discussed a nuclear option with her advisers, which would reportedly save the average household more than £1,300 a year. Mr Sunak's campaign says the move would cost more than £30 billion. And Ms Truss has vowed to bolster Britain's defences if she becomes Prime Minister, saying the era of complacency is over. She wants to push ahead with renewing Trident and strengthening support for intelligence services as part of her plan to protect the UK. And finally, more than 25,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel so far this year. That's after 915 people were intercepted yesterday. The Ministry of Defence saying they were on board 19 small boats. Monday saw the highest daily total on record, with 1,295 people making the treacherous journey from France. Those are your latest news headlines. You are now up to date on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. Now it's time to go back to Alastair Stewart and friends.
Polly, thanks very much indeed. After a 2-year hiatus, the Notting Hill Carnival is returning to the streets of West London. This weekend, the music, dance and costumes are back after the COVID break, which saw the annual celebration take place online. Carnivals grace the streets for half a century, and over 1 million people are expected to partake in the festivities this bank holiday weekend. So we can cut live now to our reporter, Alice Porter, who is there in the midst of it with that Alice smile all across her face. Just describe the atmosphere. I can see bits and bobs of it behind you, but you're there. Share.
I can barely hear you, but I think that's a testament to what an incredible event it is here at the Notting Hill Carnival, which of course hasn't been able to happen for the last 2 years because of the pandemic. So it really is an absolute joy to see everyone back on the streets, back around Notting Hill and enjoying it. Around 2 million people will be taken to the streets over this bank holiday weekend and will be absolutely enjoying it so much.
Right, so I'm sorry, I lost you there for a moment. So it was a two-way thing. You could barely hear me, and I could then barely hear you. I know that a lot of people watching this, however, they will wish the carnival goers well, but there are also concerns about law and order. Have the police got on top of that? Is this now a more peaceful, more law-abiding event than it was perhaps a few years back?
I'm sorry, Alistair, I can't hear a word you're saying.
No,
But all I can say is the music around me is absolutely electric, and it really is obviously a huge celebration of Caribbean culture when it started back in 1966, and it is so wonderful to see everybody back on the streets enjoying themselves after such a long time. And today, luckily, it's very much the family day, and it's lovely to see so many children out and about. But if you can't make it down to Notting Hill today, you can, of course, come back tomorrow. So this is happening all weekend, and it really is. And as you can see, the people behind me, we've had Jamaican floats coming past with steel bands playing music, and it really has been a total joy to be here, Alistair.
Well done. We'll call it a day there because of the communications, but we got the message loud and clear. Alice, take care, and I hope you'll be able to file a report later on, put it on video, and then we can share that as well. I'm sorry, it's the nature of the thing with the music playing and people bouncing back and forth with their little banners and stuff, but I hope you got the gist of it there. Alice Porter down there at the Notting Hill Carnival. She'll be there all afternoon, and hopefully she'll be able to cobble together a report for later on in the day. You are watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends, and we've plenty more still to come this afternoon, including, as always on this programme, we like to keep the war in Ukraine in our news agenda, simply because we believe it's important, and we'll be getting the very latest from on the ground. Plus, we'll also be discussing Boris Johnson's comments this week on how we should continue to show our support. Be talking to a friend of mine who has been out there and shown his support and is helping with the refugee effort as well. So all of that to come right after this break.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome back. It is 19 minutes to 1 and you're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends here on GB News. We're going to return to Ukraine with no apology. Not so much the military strategy or the state of play on the battlefield, but to one of the many good people who have done their bit to help, although that said, he does have a very keen and very informed view on matters military. At the beginning of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the UK was congratulated for its response to the Homes for Ukraine scheme. But the Observer newspaper reports today, and if you take the hard copy like I do, it's on page 10, there it is, that a shocking 50,000 Ukrainian refugees in the United Kingdom could be made homeless next year. There are growing concerns that when the refugees' initial 6-month placements with hosts ends next month, they will have no alternative accommodation and they will be made homeless. So are we really getting Ukraine fatigue? That, we think, is worth reflecting upon. So I'm delighted to welcome back to the programme Andrew Murray, a private businessman who has been out to Ukraine several times. And also in a moment, Kira Rudik will be joining me. Kira is a Ukrainian MP and we'll be talking to her in just a moment. I'm just getting confirmed that Andrew is on the phone. First and foremost, you've been out several times, Andrew, and have kept in touch with a number of friends out there. Is there growing confidence in Ukraine, or is there growing concern about the state of play?
I think it would be fair to say, Alistair, and good afternoon, by the way, I think it would be fair to say that probably a little bit of both. Growing confidence in certain regions that the war is progressing with the support of Western aid, and I think we can all see that in certain regions. But I think at the same time, there is concern that friends and allies in the West will be getting and experiencing war fatigue, and that's entirely understandable, and that underpins the nature of war. Once you cross that start line, whether at home or on the front line, it's total commitment. And unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of fatigue now in the West, particularly as the economic situation worsens.
You're also, the other side of the coin, which I mentioned in my introduction, Andrew, is that you're directly engaged with 2 refugees who you went out to extract. And I read out that article in The Observer, which I'm sure you've also seen, that whole programme had a really bumpy start. It eventually got underway, and now, lo and behold, it looks as if it's not only bumpy, it's going to hit the wall. How worried are you about that?
Extremely worried. Not so much for the 2 refugees that I helped to extract from the war zone in Brecbury, just to the east of Kiev, because they will have my personal support. But for the vast majority of people, Alistair, yes, it is a very tremendous worry. And it underlines the dilemma that the politicians have got. On the one hand, they've made a commitment to Ukraine, both militarily and to provide support at home. At the same time, they're dealing with the cost of living crisis, and that is something that I'm glad I'm not dealing with. But yes, it's a very real worry for those involved in the business of supporting refugees here in the UK.
Yeah. And we also have to be honest that you and I talked off the record, as it were, about who you might personally access in government and in spheres of influence over these matters, and tried very hard, though you did. I fear we have to share with folk at home that there was a lot of brick wall being hit there as well, as far as ministers and senior civil servants were concerned, was there not?
A complete brick wall, which is partially understandable given the scope and scale of the problem that, we'll name names, Lord Harrington was facing at the time. But I think it's also worth pointing out that my own MP, Dave Dugan from the Scottish National Party, and I don't want to make this political, but he was provided tremendous support and was always there to provide support to me and to the refugees. So where there's a will, there's a way, Alistair. And I think if people want to make a commitment to help, they can find a way if they want to. And that's all I'll say on that.
I heard it loud and clear, and literally as you said it, for those people listening to our conversation on radio rather than television, we cut up a picture of Liz Truss dressed in battle fatigues in the cab of a tank, a celebrated picture that has been doing the rounds. How confident are you, Andrew, that if she wins, that commitment that Boris Johnson, in many respects, personified and made large and loud across the world will continue?
I very much hope it does, and I think that's one of the reasons why he travelled back to Ukraine towards the end of his tenure just recently to underscore that commitment. And in so doing, in many respects, back Liz Truss into a corner. And I, for one, am pleased that he has done. And the bottom line here is that what happens in Ukraine matters to the whole world, and it's one of the reasons, one of the many reasons why we're experiencing a cost of living crisis. If we don't commit, then the problems we're facing at home will continue for a very long time to come.
Finally, and I did mention in the intro that you have a military background, both having served in uniform but also being involved in the, as it were, the industrial side of those things. Do you personally think that Ukraine can win this struggle against Russia?
I said at the time when you first spoke to me, Alistair, that I believe that they could, with the caveat that provided they're provided with the material support that can only come from the West, and I still believe that. Having said that, people need to understand that war is not a quick business, and it's a question of how far people want to go and how they want to define victory. And I'll leave that to the politicians. But I think from our perspective in the United Kingdom, we've got the material, we've got the money, we just need to find the will to do it, and so do others.
Andrew Murray, always a pleasure to talk to you, on the record or off the record. Thank you very much indeed for breaking into your Sunday afternoon to share further thoughts upon it. And good luck with the refugees that you are seeking to help, as you did from the very outset of our relationship. Great to talk to you, Andrew. Have a great afternoon. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Andrew Murray there, standout figure, private businessman, doing the right thing and putting pressure upon where he can, and I hope the reaction is positive to it. Now, as I said right at the beginning, I'm delighted to be joined once again by Kira Rudik, who is Ukrainian MP and the leader of the Golosh Party, and there she is. Were you able to listen to what Andrew was just saying, Kira? Yeah, brilliant. How important to you as a Ukrainian, but also as a Ukrainian political leader, is the kind of work and support that people like him, private citizen, not in politics, businessman, offer to you? How important is that?
Alistair, there are no words to stress the importance of the work and intention like that. Because we do hope here in Ukraine that the support that we are getting from people from the United Kingdom is not the political support, is not sent from the top. It's person to person, realizing, understanding and willing to help people who are in a struggle right now and who are fighting for the right cause. And this is what we are doing. And this is why it is so important that people are coming here and supporting Ukrainians the way that they can. And I honestly, from my heart, I'm thankful to Mr. Murray for the work that he is doing. I don't know him personally, but I'm truly impressed by the information that I just got regarding his work, his intentions. This is something that actually gets us going and keeps us standing and fighting. People who believe in us the way that they are willing to come here and help people with everything that they can. This is truly impressive.
I'm grateful to hear that, and I'm sure he will have heard that as well, and if not, I'll let him know later on. I also talked to him about the refugee situation, and you've pointed out, quite rightly on this programme, the extraordinary work that's been done, particularly by close neighbours like Poland, who've taken so many, hundreds and thousands of people. But here in the UK, there were many people, tens of thousands, who wanted to help. that programme is now running into some difficulty or running out. How much of a worry is that for you as a Ukrainian political leader?
So, Alistair, when I've been to UK, I have been talking to honestly many people who were behind this program about how to make it actually effective and efficient, because we have seen really many people who were willing to open their homes, but they submitted it to the program, but they were never contacted, and this good intention was never executed on. And right now, when we are 6 months in, and right now we understand that the war would not end tomorrow, we will need to still have ability to extend the program to the people who need it. I do not see the operational capacity right now to go through all the inquiries that British people have to open their homes for Ukraine, and this is a problem. And we are willing to work on how to make it the most effective, so closer to winter, to the hardest time. And we both know, Alistair, right, that this autumn and winter will be the hardest one since Second World War for all the European countries, not only for Ukraine, not only for the Great Britain, for everybody. We know that. And this is why we need to prepare in advance, both with accommodations for people, but also with how does the government handle the energy crisis, and how does everybody handle the food shortage crisis and financial crisis, everything. This is where we are right now, and we will obviously be looking like what could have been done better, but right now we need to concentrate on actions and how to be effective right now. This is the work that we are doing on the diplomatic front, and this is actually a great program, but we need to make sure that it actually works for as many people as possible.
Final question, and it's a quick one. Is that Charles Moore wrote a brilliant piece in the Telegraph yesterday, and I had Robert Fox, the defence correspondent of the Evening Standard, London Evening Standard, here on the programme yesterday, about the tide turning in your favour and that Putin getting increasingly desperate and tempted to do something even more outrageous. Final point is, how worried are you and your fellow leaders of Ukraine right now?
We are extremely concerned about the situation on the nuclear station. That's true. And we are pushing so the international spectators are attending the station, confirming that everything is fine there, but also then protecting its security. This is something that needs to be done. But we do not believe in that you can back off and then Putin will become a better person. I think it's clear for everyone in the world right now that that's just simply not happening. He's not dropping the energy bills if we are backing off. He's not dropping the military push. And I do not believe that he is desperate. He is going according to his plan, and we need to be going according to our plan.
Absolutely.
Our plan is very simple. We are going to fight, and we are going to ask for more support to support this fight. And I'm grateful for everything that we are receiving right now.
Kira, I'm grateful for your time, as always. A pleasure and an honour to talk to you. Take care of yourself, and we'll be in touch again very soon. Kira Rudik there, member of the Ukrainian Parliament. Inching towards 1 o'clock now, but time for our rural spotlight before we get to the top of the hour. And it's the peat crisis. Peat is really good for your flowers, but its extraction and commercial use is not good for the environment. It's one of the most efficient, naturally occurring countermeasures to carbon in the atmosphere. Like trees, it just gobbles it all up. But now gardeners are to be banned from using peat-based compost to preserve the source and help nature keep up that good work. I'm delighted to be joined now by a good friend of mine, Darren Rudge, better known as the Laughing Gardener. I'm guessing not laughing about this.
Well, good afternoon, Alistair, to begin with. We have to move away from peat, Alistair, and it's quite simple. Peat was discovered as a potting medium in the 30s and 40s, 1930s and 40s, and was delivered to us in the 1960s as potting compost. And let's discuss what peat does for us as gardeners. It's an inert being. So in other words, it's pest and disease free. But it's slightly acidic, which is what our plants like. It's able to take nutrients in as well as water, as well as give nutrients out. And before we had peat, we just had soil. and soil, is heavy to extract, heavy to deal with. So peat was really a really good substance for us to actually use and utilise in our gardens.
You also said to the team that there were alternatives to peat, because I said, well, peat's marvellous. My wife uses it the whole time and clearly shouldn't. But you said that there were alternatives available that could do the job as well.
Well, there are lots of alternatives available. There are your garden compost. So your compost heap can do the job of potting plants into. There is coir. There is cocoa shell, there is bark, there is wood fibre. There are lots and lots of composts. Now, we'll have to work harder with these composts, Alistair, because they're not as good as peat. So you might have to add things to make them drain better, or you might have to feed a little bit more often. But at the end of the day, we have to move away from peat. Peat is vitally important for our wildlife. Peat is vitally important to store carbon. Once we extract peat, 5% of a peat bog basically throws carbon into the atmosphere that we would use across a year in the UK. Just 5% of that. So we need to move away from it. So I'm not in tears. I'm still the laughing gardener. We just need to use alternatives. At the end of the day, there is still 35% of the compost that we actually buy actually peat-based, and 69% of that is
I am persuaded.
Amateur gardeners.
I am persuaded, and I'm going to give you the last minute before we do get to the top of the hour, because I think it's a great story, and that is that although the drought's been dreadful and the terrible temperatures have been dreadful, we find we can now grow new and different things in the United Kingdom to great success. 1 minute.
Exactly. So this is the way to look at it, folks. We are dealing with a climate change. We are dealing with new horizons. We are dealing with, new things to look at, new challenges. And horticulture should be about that, shouldn't it, Alistair? It should be about actually new challenges and not just sitting back and having that easy life. And that's really
I can now grow an avocado in Hampshire successfully.
Exactly. Why not? And your pineapples as well.
Oh, pineapples. Oh, well, there's the thing. Darren Rudge, it is genuinely always a pleasure. Thanks for your points on peat, and thanks for your points on the new horizons of horticulture. Great to talk to you as always. Have a great weekend. Darren Rudge there, the laughing gardener. You are watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends. We've more to come in the second hour of our programme this afternoon, continuing that conversation on the Tory leadership race with just a little over a week before we find out who will be our next Prime Minister. What are the polls saying, and what impact is that economic news, that leak from Camp Truss, going to impact upon it? How's that all going to work out? You won't want to miss a word of it. But first, let's bring you right up to date with your weekend weather.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farrar.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Sorry if you were expecting the weather just before the break. My mistake. There we go. We'll bring you the weather a bit later on. Hello and welcome if you've just joined us. The time is 1 minute past 1. And hello and welcome back if you've been kind enough to be with us since noon when we started. I am Alastair Stewart and we are into the final hour of our programme, keeping you company here on TV and radio, with plenty more still to come, including the all-important Tory leadership race with just over a week left before we find out who is going to win and become our next Prime Minister. But first, let's bring you right up to date with all of today's news. Here's Polly Middlehurst.
Alistair, thank you. The top story this hour: police investigating the murder of Olivia Pratt-Corbell have warned anyone in Liverpool withholding information is protecting killers. The 9-year-old was shot by a gunman who chased his intended target into her home in Liverpool on Monday. 2 men who were arrested on suspicion of murder have been released on bail, with one of them being recalled to prison for breaching the terms of his licence. Merseyside police are urging the public to come forward now, saying silence is not an option.
We've got a 9-year-old girl who won't celebrate her 18th birthday. She won't celebrate her wedding. She won't have children of her own. If you've got information and you're withholding it, you're protecting the killers. We need your information.
Well, in other news today, a huge package of financial support has been promised by the government to help struggling households through the energy crisis. The Prime Minister has written an article in the Daily Mail where he acknowledged bills are going to be eye-watering and the next few months are going to be tough. He said colossal sums of taxpayers' money is already being used to help people, and his successor will announce more support next month. Well, the 2 Tory leadership candidates are yet to reveal exactly how they plan to ease the cost of living crisis. Rishi Sunak's team has criticised reports that Liz Truss plans to cut VAT by 5%. That team has described it as incredibly regressive. It's understood the Foreign Secretary has discussed a nuclear option with her advisers, which would reportedly save the average household more than £1,300 a year. Mr Sunak's campaign says the move would cost more than £30 billion. Meanwhile, Ms Truss has vowed to bolster Britain's defences if she becomes Prime Minister, saying the era of complacency is over. She wants to push ahead with renewing Trident and strengthen support for intelligence services as part of her plan to protect the UK. Retired British Army officer Major General Tim Cross told GB News, with Russia a renewed threat, Britain needs to reconsider its defence and foreign policies.
Over these last 20 years, we have become complacent. We never really put sufficient resources in terms of military into Iraq or Afghanistan. And we weren't prepared to stay there for the length of time that we had been involved in, for example, the Cold War. So I think we have been complacent, and what's happening in Russia, Ukraine, and indeed elsewhere, I mean, autocracies, dictatorships, China and so on, has made people realise that we do need to think again about how we're going to engage in not just defence policy, but foreign policy and other aspects of our external relationships as well.
More than 25,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel so far this year. That's after 915 people were intercepted yesterday. The Ministry of Defence saying they were on board 19 small boats. Monday saw the highest daily total on record, with 1,295 people making the treacherous journey from France. A father who was jailed for torturing his son has had his release from prison blocked. Tony Hudgell was so badly abused by his parents that he needed to have both legs amputated. Anthony Smith was due to be released next month, but his case was referred to the parole board under new powers to protect the public from dangerous offenders. Tony's adoptive mother has welcomed the intervention. The Brexit minister is planning to sell off £1.5 billion worth of government offices in central London. Jacob Rees-Mogg told the Sunday Telegraph taxpayers shouldn't have to pay for buildings that are underutilised, with many civil servants now working from home. He's due to publish a property strategy that will see staff operating in fewer buildings as part of a network of government hubs. And Europe's biggest street festival is back after a 2-year break. Millions of people expected to attend Carnival in Notting Hill, which was postponed because of the pandemic. And today is Family Day, featuring a children's parade, as well as music, of course, and another party being held tomorrow over there in Westbourne Grove. Lovely stuff too. You're with GB News. More news as it happens. Now back to Alistair.
Polly, thank you very much indeed. Before we move on, we have been receiving your views about the Conservative Party leadership race throughout the programme. Time to share some of them before we continue that conversation. Graham says, I've watched most of the hustings. My perception is that Rishi Sunak spends most of the time saying what he won't do and criticising Liz Truss rather than what he would do. At one point, when asked a question, instead of answering, he told people to read his website. I think he's boxed himself in, unlike Liz, who can adapt to what is needed as it happens. Russ says, the only question I have really is why Rishi Sunak has not done the decent thing and conceded to Liz. Many more important things to be focusing on, surely. Well, I'd just say to Russ that Mr Sunak has made it clear that he thinks it needs to be a debate right up to the wire, and the chairman of the 1922 committee, Graham Brady, also agrees with that. But you've had your say, Russ, and perfectly good for that. And finally, at this stage, Ian chips in. Liz is the best of a worst bunch, but, and it's a big but, the Tory MPs have stitched us up, the membership. Most members wanted Suella or Kemi. And not a few of you, Ian, wanted Boris Johnson. There you go. Keep those coming in, and hopefully I'll get some more into the programme before we go off air at 2 o'clock. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel at GB News, where you can get all of the previous interviews and indeed programmes in full. Now, with all of the talk of a Truss victory, and even Sunak calling it a day, we thought it might be time to take a sit rep, as it was called, on the next big battle, the general election. I chatted about this at the start of the campaign with a good friend of mine, Rupert Howell, and I wanted to revisit to see what effect the marketing and advertising behind the leadership campaigns had upon the whole battle. So wanted to know what their data was now coming up with in the last week of the race. Now, Rupert's on holiday, but I'm delighted to say that his colleague John Kieran, I beg your pardon, John, who is the Chief Executive Officer of System 1 Group, is able to join us. So, Rup gets the holiday, you're here working, but it's great to see you, and thank you very much indeed. I'm actually going to start, if I may, with that one of the 3 emails I just read out, because I think it's absolutely on the money from your perspective. Our viewer Graham said, I've watched most of the hustings. My perception is that Rishi Sunak spends most of the time saying what he won't do and criticising Liz Truss rather than what he would do. He then goes on and makes the argument. But that's all about brand, isn't it? And that's a growing perception amongst Tory voters.
Well, it is. And I think it's the important thing is it's among Tory voters or party members. And a lot of the comments and the media sort of seem to be shifting towards Liz Truss. However, what we measure is we don't ask people their voting intentions. And this is basically, if there was a general election, next week, who would win, including how would Rishi and Liz compare and perform against Keir Starmer. And the results that Rupert shared with you right at the beginning, which basically, says Rishi is the candidate that would win a general election. And I'm afraid that Keir Starmer would beat Liz Truss if there was a general election, a snap election. Now, if she becomes leader, she has 2 years to build, because basically what we measure is the candidate's fame, So just how well known they are, how people feel about them, and their fluency. Fame, feeling, and fluency. Fluency is distinctiveness. So Donald Trump's hair. It has nothing to do with political content, but it actually matters. It's recognition. And Rishi is much better known. He actually has stronger feeling and much more fluency. And we've repeated the result, the data recently, and it doesn't change that much. I know the media always sort of think that the campaign makes a big difference, but we predicted Donald Trump would win the Republican nomination and the election back in 2016, 10 months before the actual, before the campaign had started. And it's one of those truths, as in brands with politicians.
Yeah.
It takes time to build up your
absolutely.
fame.
That's why I put Graham's point to you, because there is a world of difference between saying, I quite like the cut of his jib or I quite like the cut of her jib. It is that crucial public perception of what makes them tick, what they stand for. And Richard Branson defined brand perfectly well. It may be a big V letter on the back of an aeroplane, but it tells you what's going to happen on the aeroplane, what attitude the folks serving you are going to take, etc., etc., etc. Has Truss redefined that brand successfully at all, in your view, during this campaign?
Not yet. I mean, literally, the short version is that Rishi would beat Keir Starmer in an election and Liz Truss would still lose. There's been a tiny shift, but these things take a lot longer to really shift. So, if the Tory party members actually, want another, period in office in 2 years' time, if that's when the election is, they would be better off choosing Rishi. They may not, but that's what the general public, 900 voters, nationally representative voters, that's what they think. And,
sure.
Politics is something, very, very well, and many commentators do. But for the general public, it's so much simpler. I mean, it's just, what is your general perception of these politicians without
absolutely.
all the detail?
The other thing that you are the experts on, but I've often thought about as well, and that is it's the perception of a party as much as it is the perception of a party leader. And I get the sense from the opinion polling, and I know that's not what you do. You look at brand and shift in attitude. I've got that distinction. But it seems to me the polls at the moment putting Sir Keir Starmer ahead of Liz Truss to the point of winning is actually the public saying, we've had enough of the Tories. We want the Labour Party to have a go at this. Because if you drill into that kind of data, there is no passionate love even in the Labour Party for Sir Keir Starmer.
No, there isn't. And, part of what we asked, in terms of the Conservative Party and how people feel about them, it is almost 50% of people are pretty negative. I mean, of all the Partygate and other things that have gone on. But the really important thing is that the leader actually makes the biggest difference. Yes, the party and perceptions of the party and your natural affiliations, but actually it is the leader. We predicted that Boris would, win the Conservative leadership before he did. And, for whatever, faults individuals, have or don't have, he was very charismatic and distinctive. And that's why the leader, who they choose as the leader, matters. It matters even more than the party, the perceptions of the party in general, because it becomes personalised. It just becomes simplified and personalised.
Final question then, and it flows beautifully from that. Yeah. When the Sunday Telegraph, and here I am for people listening to us on radio holding it up again, Truss-Mull's nuclear option of 5% VAT cut. Sunday Times, Truss-Mull's emergency, interesting double use of Mull's, emergency cuts to income tax and VAT. That's not going to shift the needle in your view, because it's Truss the person that matters more than Truss the batch of policies.
It does. It does. Policies, people just don't take them in. I mean, when we did the American election, you know, we measured which slogans were associated with each of the candidates, and basically Donald Trump was associated with almost everybody else's slogans, not just his own, because he was just, in a way, the loudest mouth and the most distinctive. So, yeah, the policies, I'm afraid, you know, vitally important though they are to actually getting something done, they don't land with people. It's simpler than that. And whether it should or shouldn't be, it just is.
What a perfect way to end. It just is, and that's the reality of it. John, I've so enjoyed that, and I hope it helped folk at home understand what's really going on out there. And give my love to Root when you next talk to him. And tell him it's your turn to have a holiday now as well. Great to see you, and thanks for joining us.
All right,
John Kieran there, CEO of System 1. Really intriguing. Experts in political branding. It's the brand as much as anything that matters, even more than the policies. There is an intriguing truth for you and perhaps our political leaders to mull over. We've been talking about that leadership race from all areas of the Conservative Party. But how does Labour feel about it? My Northern Irish, Scottish and Welsh guests seem to think that Truss would be the best person to take charge and take on Labour. But what does the opposition feel about those left in the running for the top job? Just two of them now. Who do they fear most becoming Prime Minister and facing their leader? I am delighted to be joined by a friend of mine and a good friend of the programmes that I present. There she is, Siobhan McDonagh, who is the Labour Member of Parliament for Mitcham and Morden. Siobhan, it's great for you to break into your Sunday afternoon to join us on the programme. It follows from a fascinating conversation I just had with John about branding. So that informs my question to you bluntly. Does it matter to you as a leading light in the Labour Party whether it's Truss or Sunak?
It doesn't bother me in the slightest, because what worries me is how are people going to cope this autumn with their gas and electricity bills? I did my advice surgery on Friday, and there are lots of really very worried people out there. And I'm unsure myself as whether I think it's better that people know what's coming or not, because I am really worried at the impact it's going to have on pensioners, on families, you know, just the fear of what they may be facing.
Sense then, and John said to me, no, it probably wouldn't make any difference at all, that the papers are full of what may well be in that Liz Truss emergency budget if she becomes the leader and Kwasi Kwarteng becomes her Chancellor of the Exchequer, cutting VAT, perhaps increasing the amount that you, I and everybody else can earn before we pay tax. Is that going to shift the needle?
Well, I don't know if it's going to shift the needle, but it isn't going to solve the problem of the gas and electricity bills this autumn, because overwhelmingly the people most affected by increasing bills are people who do not pay tax and who pay very little VAT because they have very little spending power. And there are pensioners, there are families who are on universal credit or who earn below the tax threshold already, and they are facing bills up to January, the equivalent of about £70 a week, and going up to over £100 a week between January and April. How are people going to actually face that and get through? That's my top concern.
Are you content as well? I mean, that was objective commentary, which you always offer, although you are a Labour MP. Put the Labour hat firmly back on now. Are you totally comfortable? You've been around a while with this idea from Kira and Rachael that price cap, the average maximum that households can pay in the United Kingdom, should be frozen, even if it's going to cost 50 billion a year, nearly 100 billion over 2 years. Are you totally confident that that is the best way forward from a Labour perspective?
Well, the plan that they put forward is to freeze prices until April next year, and it's going to cost 29 billion, and it's going to be funded through a windfall tax on the gas producers in the North Sea. I suppose if I had any quibble, it would be the fact that very wealthy people are going to get the support as well. But actually, we are talking about quite a small group of people, because I believe the size of increases we are about to see in energy bills will affect people quite high up the income scale. To be in the top 20% of earners in this country, you have to be on £63,000 or above. And I think there's a lot of people out there on that money who, when they pay their mortgage and they pay their childcare, they don't feel that rich.
Fascinating, and indeed the current Chancellor of the Exchequer, Nadeem Zahawi, made several of those points when he spoke day before yesterday about the need to help people on 45 grand a year. You've gone even a little bit higher. So, as it were, we are genuinely all in it together right across the spectrum. How do you deal, though, as a leading Labour figure, I mean, not least in London, where you were chair for a long time, but still in the fight and in the mix, when your enemies say, there they go again, bottomless pit of borrowing, chuck, I take your point about 29, 30 billion over a quarter, but therefore, if it was a year, then it would be the kind of numbers that I talk. But there you go again, borrow billions to sort it out, cap the price, doesn't do anything about the supply side, and then if it comes to it, if the worst comes to it, nationalise it again. I thought you'd left all of that behind you.
Well, I don't think there's anybody, any party, who is not going to be in it to spending money over the next 6 months. It's how you spend that money. And we think it's about pegging prices for everybody and not just offering that support to people who already have a great deal. And you're absolutely right. It's not just about the short term. We've got to be insulating homes. In 2013, David Cameron just slash money to insulate our homes. 2 million families would be in better insulated homes if that hadn't happened. In 2015, he slashed the regulations about requiring that new homes go up to, have a lot of insulation. And we could have those homes that we didn't have to worry about people and how they met the bill. So you're right. It's a short-term and a long-term solution. But right now, what are people going to do when they get those bills?
When you and I first met back in the Blair era, Tony turned it round away from the Michael Foot Clause 4 approach to it. Corbyn re-embraced it. Keir's made it crystal clear he doesn't want to go down the Corbyn road. Some of this looks like he's having a sniff around the Corbyn road again.
I don't think so. I think what he's done is come up with a plan and said how he's going to pay for it. Now, it has to be paid for, but do we expect people who are already hard-pressed to pay more tax in order to subsidise it? Or do we say to BP, who made £7 billion in profit in the last quarter, or Shell, who made £9.5 billion, no, mate, it's your turn to pay for it?
Always a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. And keep in touch. Love to talk to you again very soon. Thank you very much indeed. Siobhan McDonagh there, Labour MP for Mitcham and Morden. It's 23 minutes past 1, but we've still got lots more to come this afternoon on Alastair Stewart and Friends. After the break, Formula One's back after the summer break, and it is the Belgian Grand Prix today at the glorious, mighty, historic Spa. And it looks to be a very exciting race after one of the most unexpected and interesting qualifying sessions this season has seen. We'll have all of the very latest live from Belgium, but first, let's take a look. This time, I am right at the weather.
We're looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK is looking mostly dry with sunny spells, though some rain towards the northwest of Scotland. So, starting off in Scotland then, largely cloudy there, albeit little sunshine towards the south, rain pushing in from the northwest, and that could be heavy at times. Moving across to Northern Ireland, a few sharp showers for many, but dry mainly, and some brightness breaking through as well. And whilst the odd shower can't be ruled out across northwest of England, it is unlikely we'll see many at all, with any warm or sunny breaks instead. A similar picture for you, just taking shape now across Wales. Most places here have some bright or sunny spells, in which case it should be pleasantly warm, a small chance of the odd shower expected there. Then in the Midlands, it'll be a little brighter than further west, with a greater chance of some lengthy sunny periods. Maximum temperatures in the low to mid-20s generally. And further east across East Anglia, also set to be a fine afternoon, variable amounts of cloud, meaning some smells of warm weather at times. Then towards the south coast for you last of all. A very similar picture there as well. Dry, fine and sunny at times. Temperatures getting into the mid-20s for many. Light winds as well. It will feel very warm. So the précis then, any showers dying out this evening, but some further rain across northwestern parts of Scotland. And that's how the weather's shaping up this Sunday.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GBNews.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome back. It's 27 minutes past 1 and you're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and friends here on GB News. Formula One is back after the summer break and the drivers are fresh-faced and revving up for the Belgian Grand Prix later today. Now, yesterday's qualifying was very interesting and exciting to say the least. Ferrari's Carlos Sainz Jr. will start the race in pole position, with Red Bull's Sergio Perez just behind, whilst Max Verstappen starts today at the back in P15 after facing a penalty. Lewis Hamilton will kick off in P4 with his teammate for Mercedes, George Russell, in 5th. Joining me now is Philip Duncan, regular on these occasions, I'm delighted to say, PA's sports Formula One correspondent. And there he is, grinning from ear to ear, live at the Spa-Francorchamps racetrack. Can we be clear to people who, unlike you and me, are not addicted to this nonsense of a sport, that it's the rule book that's dictated this bizarre grid, not the performance of the individual drivers?
Yeah, totally, Alistair. That's correct. I mean, as you said, we should see Max Verstappen on pole today for today's race. He put his Red Bull on pole effectively 0.6 faster than anyone else yesterday. But he's taken on a new engine here, a new gearbox, and it's his 4th of the season, which is one more than you're allowed. So under the rules, he's effectively being chucked to the back of the grid. But because 6 other drivers have also had penalties, it means he's not quite at the back. He's 14th. He's moved up 1 from yesterday, so he's 14th on the grid, and that's where he'll start today. His championship rival Leclerc also at the back of the grid. He's 15th, also because of an engine penalty. So
and again, just to be crystal clear, I mean that's because the sport doesn't want people like Ferrari and Red Bull who have literally backers with unlimited pockets and wallets to be able to buy their way to victory. It's got to be a level playing field, and this is the enforcement of that level playing field.
Yeah, that's right, Alistair. I mean, effectively, the big guns could be chucking in new engines, new parts at every race, and F1 brought in this rule a few years ago, basically to eliminate that. It makes it a bit difficult for your ordinary fan to follow. It's a bit farcical in many ways. So you've got these guys at the back of the grid, and because they're serving penalties, but it should make for a fun race today. We'll get to see Max Verstappen coming back through the pack, and that will make for an entertaining show.
Totally, and we're talking about one of the great traditional circuits where pure driving skill kicks in even more than the technology and the design. A great driver can take Francorchamps on and can win.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is one of the great tracks, isn't it? One of the most iconic tracks on the sports calendar. And just 30 minutes ago, actually, they announced that we'll have another race here next year. It was in some doubt as to whether they'll continue. The sports bosses are trying to, expand this schedule beyond the traditional heartland of its European races. But yeah, a deal's been confirmed for next year. That's partly to do with the fact that they couldn't get a South African Grand Prix over the line for 2023. But yeah, good news for us petrol heads who love this track here in Spa.
Yeah, because then I don't have to ask you the next question, because that's what it was. I hadn't heard the announcement, but that genuinely is very, very good news. What I also think is genuinely bad, sad news is Daniel Ricciardo, who I love, the crazy Australian guy who, if he does well, drinks champagne out of his shoe and the rest of it. He is not going to survive at McLaren. They've had enough, thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't been a surprise in many ways that was in the offing, but yeah, it was announced earlier this week that those two parties are parting ways at the end of the season. McLaren brought Ricciardo over to their team, hoping that he will, really deliver on the form that he had with Red Bull, which turned him into a 7-time Grand Prix winner. But unfortunately, other than one race last year, which he won in Monza, he hasn't really been able to deliver. And the fact that they're paying him something in the region of $20 million a year, they decided that it'd be better for them to get rid of him a year early. And they're effectively paying him off next season, and he won't be with the team. And his future actually in the sport is also looking pretty vulnerable because there's not many seats available for next season.
Well, I reckon some of the great commentators here and there may be looking to their laurels, because sure, he'd be brilliant at that as well. Philip, thanks for breaking into what I know is a tremendously busy day, because you have the day job to do as well, but for sharing those thoughts and insights and for confirming that Francorchamps will live for at least another year. I'm thrilled to hear that as well. Have a great day and enjoy the race. It's bound to be a cracker. Philip Duncan there, the Press Association Sports Formula One correspondent. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends at 32 minutes past 1 or 28 minutes to 2, with plenty more still to come in that final half hour, including Liz Truss's camp says that she is considering slashing VAT by 5% if she becomes Prime Minister. A source from Rishi's campaign says the cut would be incredibly regressive. So we'll be catching up with independent economist Julian Jessup about all of that. But first, let's bring you up to date with the rest of the news. Here's Polly Middlehurst.
Alistair, thank you. The headlines: police investigating the murder of Olivia Pratt-Corbell in Liverpool have warned anyone withholding information is protecting killers. The 9-year-old was shot dead by a gunman who chased his intended target into her home in the city on Monday. 2 men who were arrested on suspicion of murder have now been released on bail, with one of them being recalled to prison for breaching the terms of his licence. Merseyside police are urging the public to come forward now, saying silence is not an option.
We've got a 9-year-old girl who won't celebrate her 18th birthday. She won't celebrate her wedding. She won't have children of her own. If you've got information and you're withholding it, you're protecting the killers. We need your information.
Well, in other news, the Prime Minister says a huge package of financial support will be delivered to help struggling households through the energy crisis. Writing in the Daily Mail, Boris Johnson acknowledged bills are going to be eye-watering and the next few months are going to be tough. He said colossal sums of taxpayers' money is already being used to help people, and his successor will announce more support next month. More than 25,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel so far this year. That's after 915 people were intercepted yesterday, the Ministry of Defence saying they were on board 19 small boats. Monday saw the highest daily total on record, with 1,295 people making the treacherous journey from France. And millions of people are expected to attend the Notting Hill Carnival in West London, which is back after a 2-year break because of the pandemic. Europe's biggest street festival celebrates a fusion of Caribbean, African and European cultures. And today, of course, Family Day, featuring a children's parade and music, ending tomorrow with the adults putting on a colourful show. On TV, online and on DAB Plus radio with GB News right now. Don't go anywhere. Alistair will be back in a moment.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back, 23 minutes to 2. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and friends here on GB News. So, the Truss camp say that she's considering slashing VAT by 5% to ease the cost of living crisis if she's elected as Prime Minister next week. The Telegraph today reports that the Conservative leadership favourite has discussed the move with advisers as part of a package of measures to offset those rising energy bills. Now, when I read and reflected on the Truss briefing, remember it's a briefing, it's a leak, it's not a fact yet. Last night and this morning, I asked the team to get in touch immediately with independent economist Julian Jessup, who has worked at the Treasury, and he was on the programme yesterday, and I wanted him back on. What he was talking about yesterday was the urgency that couldn't be overestimated about the cost of living crisis, and that he thought the answer was the best of what both Camp Truss and Camp Sunak had to offer. And I'm going to talk to him again in just a couple of minutes. But to get that ball rolling, we also asked you to get in touch with your views upon it. And let's start off with Ray, who says, one major problem I can see is the fact that the very poor spend a high proportion of their money on non-vatable items, e.g. food. Interesting that Siobhan McDonagh for Labour made exactly that point just a few moments ago. David says, so, as the government don't actually have any money of their own, we pay in the long run through our taxes. More supply and the suspension of green initiatives and taxes is required now, with nuclear and fracking programmes speeded up. So there's two fascinating thoughts, and thank you both. And keep the thoughts coming in. If we have time at the very end, we'll read a few more out. And do subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are at GB News. And I'm delighted to say that Julian has agreed, and I believe is there right now. There he is, hurrah. 2 days running, you do me a great honour. Have you basically got what you wanted, if this leak is accurate, the best of Camp Truss and the best of Camp Sunak?
Well, I think it's another important part of the jigsaw. I think that a VAT cut is a good idea because it's probably one of the best ways to get large amounts of money into the economy quickly, and also a way of giving back some of the extra money that people are paying in taxes of all kinds because inflation is higher than the Treasury anticipated. I think that the main downside is something actually your correspondent Ray suggested, which is that it's not particularly well targeted at those people who are struggling with their fuel bills or their food bills because VAT on those items is already very low or just 5%. But remember, it's not just them that are struggling, not just the very poorest. I mean, large amounts of middle income, the squeezed middle are suffering as well. And they will benefit more from a cut in VAT too.
Absolutely fascinating, because Siobhan McDonagh, a friend of mine, Labour MP for many years in London, Mitcham and Morden, who I think is a bright bunny and knows what she's talking about. She made that point as well about higher earners. Nadeem Zahawi, the current Chancellor, for how long we do not know, he also made the point. It's across the board. But here's the thing. You know more about the politics and the economics of it coming together. What struck me most is that this is political, because this is Truss coming up and saying it may not be perfect, as you've just described, but it's down the road of you and I keeping more money in our wallets once our pay slips come through, and if we go shopping, paying slightly less because the VAT is down, rather than another cheque coming through the post or another discount for the local authority. In that sense, it's pure Truss politics.
I think there's a lot in that. I think clearly Liz Truss is trying to distinguish herself from Rishi Sunak, who favours more targeted support for low-income households. But I think in practice, as I was saying yesterday, you will need to do both. I think a VAT cut or cuts in income tax on their own aren't really going to be enough. You're going to need to do more through the benefit system to support those who are really struggling at the low end with their bills. And I also still think you need a contingency plan in place to deal with what might happen next year. I think what we're talking about now is enough to deal with the shock from October. But what happens if energy prices continue to rise next year? And I think that's where the idea of some form of energy price freeze might come back into play again.
Well, we didn't fall out over that, but we had an interesting slight difference of opinion yesterday, and I may come back to that if we have time at the end. But there's another bit I wanted to pick up, because you did a very thoughtful tweet, and if you're on social media, by the way, do follow Julian Jessup, because he's really, really good. But you did an instant response to the Truss leaked package, and one of your headline points was about the help for business, because if you and I go shopping, or anybody else does, obviously we're spending money with a small business. And we had a former chair of the Federation of Small Businesses on the programme alongside you yesterday, who said that they were gravely worried that the government and these two candidates had forgotten about them. You point out that in this, there's genuine help for people who are running small businesses.
Yeah, I think two very important points there. I mean, first of all, some people say that a VAT cut might not work because it wouldn't be passed on in full to consumers. Well, actually, one other way it could help is that there are some struggling small businesses who could use the benefit of a cut in VAT basically to stay afloat. So, yes, they wouldn't pass it on to consumers, but it would help to prevent them from going bankrupt. But the broader point is that, yes, this isn't just about households. This is also about small businesses and businesses generally who, in many cases, are running to the end of their sort of 1 or 2 year fixes on energy prices. So many of them are seeing even bigger increases in their energy bills than households are, extraordinary as it may seem. So I think any support also needs to take businesses into account, including a price freeze, but tax cuts and benefit increases as well need to help them too.
Yeah, and keep those small businesses going is a key part of avoiding recession across the wider economy. Two final points quickly. One is on the negative side, you also point out, and I quote you back to yourself, in the short term, it cuts inflation, but it's only temporary. So Sunak's core criticism that inflation is the prime enemy is dismissed by Camp Truss.
Well, not quite. I mean, first of all, even a short-term reduction in inflation is clearly worth having, given the problems we've got at the moment. But I think the Trust camp would argue in the longer term, inflation is really about monetary policy. It's about what the Bank of England does, not about fiscal policy. So I think that's the right approach, in my view, that the government should do what it can to support the economy and to vulnerable households and businesses. It's the bank's job to worry about inflation.
Yeah. Back to the Minford article that we both discussed at length in yesterday's Telegraph, if you're interested in it. Google Patrick Minford, Bank of England. It's a brilliant interview with Simon Heffer. Final point in a sentence, I've just been told in my ear, because otherwise we'll run over. Will the Treasury at the moment be loving this or panicking?
Oh, definitely panicking. And already feel they spent too much money during the pandemic. And, all these additional tax cuts and spending increases were the last thing they want to be thinking about.
Brilliant stuff. Sorry to have disrupted your weekend, not once but twice, but to me personally and to our viewers, brilliant service. Julian Jessup, as always, a great pleasure to have you on board. Thank you very much indeed. What a cracker he is. And when he says they'll be panicking, he knows, because he used to work at the Treasury. Independent economist there, Julian Jessup. Now, we spoke in depth yesterday and indeed today about the energy and the cost of living crisis, both of which are driving this Tory leadership race. You like it very much indeed when we talk to small business people at the front line to share their experiences and perhaps to learn lessons from them as well and see what's going on in that neck of the woods. So we've got another one today. Yesterday, we spoke to those in the hospitality and the manufacturing sector, but today we're talking to a beauty salon owner, and it is Joe Belivacqua. Is that right, Joe? Have I got the surname right?
Almost.
Almost. I'm going to call you Joe going forward, but I do want to underline the fact that your salon is called Serenity Loves, and it is in the fantastic city of Peterborough. Now, the energy cap is affecting you as a family, clearly, but is it also directly impacting, the costs are impacting the business for which you get no help?
Exactly. Yeah, we definitely feel like it is a three-pronged attack as a small business owner at the moment. So not only are our own bills going up for the electricity that we use in salon, and unfortunately we are a business that has to use electricity, we have to use gas. We obviously trying to minimise that as much as possible, but that's not always the case that we can do that. Also, the bills of our staff are going up considerably, so we have to think about that also, and how do we protect them and support them through this cost of living crisis as much as possible. Obviously, it's been a very hard time after the last 2.5 years. We've done multiple wage increases for them, but sometimes that's just not enough when people are trying to put food on the table and now having to think about when they're putting their heating on and using electricity. So not only those two things do we have to deal with, we also now have to deal with the fact that our customers might not have a disposable income like they have done pre the pandemic, or even during the pandemic when we were in this false economy of having money through furlough and grants and things like that, which kind of saw us through, which was great at the time. But now we really have to be realistic about what is our future. How do we remain resilient after the last 2.5 years, which has been more than traumatic for small business owners, especially in the leisure and the hospitality and the personal care industry? Where do we go moving forward? And we definitely need answers. We definitely need more help. And the VAT cuts, obviously, if that happens, that would be great. We've been calling for that, especially in our industry, for years. But whether that comes into fruition or not, who knows?
Well, as I said, quite brilliantly spotted by you, because it is a leak at the moment. But if it happens, I'm thrilled to hear that it would be of benefit to you. If you had a direct line to, or if Liz Truss came in for a hairdo to your salon in Peterborough, and she said, OK, tell me, Joe, which is the most important, your input costs like energy or the price of your product affected by VAT? I can either help you keep your electricity costs down, or I can help you keep your prices down. Which would you choose?
I guess it's if they could put a cap on the electricity, that would be great, because we would have more control of what was going out. But a VAT cut for a salon the size of ours, which is quite big, a VAT cut would be the most beneficial thing for us if, of course, the electricity costs didn't go through the roof as like what they are suggesting now. And I think for businesses, it's a lot harder to put that cap in as well. So I think we just need some certainty. And I think as small business owners, that's all we've ever asked for. It's all we've ever craved. It's hard to plan for things when you don't have certainty, when things are out of your control. Yeah. You can put time and energy into planning, but then somebody else decision affects all of that, and you have to start all over again. So I think at the moment it's just certainty. It's if you're going to say something, make sure that you follow it through and to communicate it as quickly as possible, because I see every time I go on social media, every time I speak to somebody else in our industry, there is a salon closing every single day.
Yeah.
So it worries me, especially for our industry, what that looks like. And for the existing salons that are around, we're having to put our prices up, whereas usually it would be once a year. We're having to look at that maybe every 6 months or every quarter. And we've lost lots of clients because we've had to put our prices up to survive. And unfortunately, that's what we want, but that's the reality that we have to face.
Joe, final quick one, if I may, and don't get this wrong, but people like hair salon workers and like taxi drivers, you chat to your customers and we probably share more truths and honesties with you than perhaps we should do because we're relaxed and we like you. In 30 seconds, how would you characterise the mood amongst your clientele? How worried are they?
I would say they are. I would absolutely say there's lots of conversations going on in salon. Our job, though, is to create a very kind of relaxed, safe space. So although we acknowledge the struggles that everyone's facing and the worry that everyone's facing, we have to make sure that when people leave our salon, they're not more stressed, they're more relaxed, they feel great, that actually when they're coming in, they know that they're spending their money with a small business and they enjoy it and it's worth the investment that they've spent with us. So although we do talk about it briefly, we do try and steer the conversation about all the great times that people are having and the beautiful summer that we're having in the holidays. So
I love it.
Concentrate on the great stuff that's going on at the moment. And it's down to us as the business leaders to carry that burden of what we do next and how we move forward.
A brilliant hairdresser, a brilliant philosopher and a brilliant guru. Joe, a pleasure meeting you. Bevilacqua, I'll try it just once more. But what I won't get wrong is the owner of the Serenity Loves Beauty Salon in Peterborough. We really wish you and your team the very best of luck and thanks for finding time for us this Sunday afternoon. Lovely to meet you. So there we have it. Go to your hairdresser, share your thoughts, and they'll try and cheer you up as well as make you look handsome and beautiful or whatever. Now, finally, school's back for some, and nearly back for others too. Although parents may be excited to have a rest back-to-school season, can also leave a dent in pockets. A new law to protect parents in England and Wales from unnecessary school uniform costs comes into effect from September 2022, next month. State schools will be told to remove unnecessary branded items from their uniform requirements so parents can shop around more. And the Children's Society charity says the average cost of a secondary school uniform last year was £337 and £315 for primary schools. And according to Barclaycard this year, because of rising prices, around a quarter of parents are expecting to have to spend more than usual. So, how can you save money on those school essentials? Joining me now to tell us more is Euphemia Moore, also known as She's on a Budget, and Fem on her online following. Great to see you again. You're a mum as well as a blogger and an expert in these matters. First and foremost, what does that new law actually try to do?
Say that again, sorry, I'll just cut you.
What does the new law actually try to do?
The new law is trying to, I suppose, get everybody onto an even playing field. So by removing the logo and by allowing parents to be able to shop in, I suppose, like, you know, your regular supermarket for uniform that doesn't have, you know, the logo on it, but also has the right colour, it's going to let everyone have a bit more of an even playing field in when they come to buying their uniforms.
You've got two kids, one who's a bit older, so you've been through it in very recent times as well as a little bit way back when. Do you sense that things are better now that the supermarkets and people like that have got on board, or is it still a really big challenge for someone living on a tight budget?
I definitely think it is, especially with like the cost of living crisis that we're going through at the moment. I think times have passed. There were certain vouchers. I think the government gave a bit more help. This is definitely like a massive help. I mean, I can't wait for it to come into play. My youngest is 13, so she will obviously be impacted by this. But there are still many other ways that I advise people in how to save and budget for these type of big expenses. Like, they're always going to come around, you know, birthdays are going to come around, school uniforms going to come around. If you want to go for a holiday, they're going to come around. I think it's about managing your finances altogether in order for you to prepare for these things, you know.
So give me your 2 top tips then in both categories. One is if I got to go out there with my wife now, my kids are far too old for it, but if I had to do it right now ahead of September, what's your top tip on keeping my costs down? And secondly, if I've got a little darling who's going to go from primary into secondary in 2 years' time, what should I be doing right now? 2 top tips.
Okay. So top tips, I would say most schools do offer second-hand clothing. So if you are from a very, very low income family, then you can go to your schools. The PTA department usually has this uniform on offer. I know it's not something that everybody wants to run and go and do, but if that is the situation that you're facing, it's definitely going to alleviate some of that spending that you may do. There are also grants that the government offers. There is a uniform grant. It does depend on the benefits that you are on, but there is a uniform grant which is up to like £200 that can help, again, parents that are on low income. But if you are someone who is struggling but you aren't entitled to benefits, a lot of loyalty apps are available where they give you 10% off if you're like a regular shopper. Supermarkets, as I said, do offer plain clothing such as shirts, trousers. Be careful of the multi-packs though. Definitely be careful of multi-packs, because you may want to get 3 or 4 shirts, but you don't want to necessarily get 3 or 4 pairs of trousers. It's not necessarily that, you know, needed. You may just need maybe 1 or 2, and it may be a lot cheaper just to do that. The other thing I would say in terms of long term though, so if you are waiting maybe another year or 2 for your younger one to go into school, definitely try thinking about breaking down that spend over a matter of weeks. I mean, I use savings trackers, as many of you know, and I have like a 52-week challenge where I'm literally putting £5 a week. Uniform. And when you think of how much you can save by putting £5 a week for any expense, you're going to get hundreds at the end of it, you know, and that makes it easier on your mind and on your pocket.
It's our old friend, Jam Jar Budgeting, which you introduced us to when we last spoke. Fem, great to talk to you, and thanks for coming back on board, and have a lovely weekend. See you again soon. Fem Moore there, money-saving online influencer, talking a good deal of sense. Look up, she's on a budget. That's where you'll find even more from her. For me, that's it, but I'm back tomorrow with On the Money at 1 o'clock. Hope you can join me then. Until then, have a lovely Sunday afternoon. Here is your weather.
Well, looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK is looking mostly dry with sunny spells, though some rain towards the northwest of Scotland. So, starting off in Scotland then, largely cloudy there, albeit little sunshine towards the south, rain pushing in from the northwest, and that could be heavy at times. Moving across to Northern Ireland, a few sharp showers for many, but dry mainly, and some brightness breaking through as well. And whilst the odd shower can't be ruled out across northwest of England, it is unlikely we'll see many at all, with any warm or sunny breaks instead. A similar picture for you, just taking shape now across Wales. Most places here have some bright or sunny spells, in which case it should be pleasantly warm, a small chance of the odd shower expected there. Then in the Midlands, it'll be a little brighter than further west, with a greater chance of some lengthy sunny periods. Maximum temperatures in the low to mid-20s generally. And further east across